Hey folks, before we get started, I just wanted to tell you, you can unlock unlimited access to political news, commentary, opinion, and a whole lot more at inforum.news/port for only 99 cents a month for your first 3 months. Hurry, get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now. This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes and powering our vehicles to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Welcome to Plain Talk, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, it's always tough when we talk about building things, because when you build a thing, particularly a very industrial thing, like a pipeline or maybe transmission lines for electricity or maybe a soybean crushing facility, which is the one we're going to talk about here in a moment, it's got to be built somewhere, right? People are going to live near that, and rightfully so, we have a very arduous process around those sorts of projects where we want to take into account the people who live there and property rights and environmental impacts and a lot of other things. It's a necessary process, because when we build these things, it's important that we do it right so that the people who are doing the building are going to be good neighbors. So a lot of times, though, sometimes we see pushback. And when I approach these debates, one thing that I think of is I am by default on the side of building things. And I think that the burden of proof is on those who don't want to build things. They need to come out with a good explanation for why. So let's talk about our topic for this show. And joining me right now is State Representative Jared Hagrit. He's from District 20. He's a fourth-generation North Dakota farmer. He runs a seed conditioning business, part of the Integrated Ag Services in Northwood. He's also a former chairman of the United Soybean Board. And what we're going to be talking about is a soybean crushing facility, like I said, that is going to be built near Casselton. It's a joint project between Louisiana-based CGB Enterprises and Minnesota soybean processors. The goal is to create livestock feed that would be sold to American livestock producers, and as well as some global customers like Japan. This project is coming up. Cass County needs to make some regulatory decisions about this project, and there is pushback from locals who have a lot of complaints about the project. And here to talk with me about that is, once again, Representative Hagrit. And Jared, how you doing?
Pretty good, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Staying warm this February, I hope.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have the weather change here. It's been a brutal one.
It's finally spring, summer, and fall make it all worth it, though, right?
You got it.
Well, tell me about this project. Why do we need this? Why do we need to build this? Why is this important?
Well, I kind of fall in the same camp as you, Rob. Well, not kind of. I do. I pro building things, pro value add. That's one of the things that my business, Integrated Ag Services, is a value added ag processing facility. We process a lot of soybean and wheat seed that we grow on our own farm. So in the past, we've actually worked with various companies out of the Casselton area and hauled soybeans down there for the export market, in the food grade export market into Japan. And excuse me, but my experience with the United Soybean Board, the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association, North Dakota Soybean Council, as I've served on those boards and various roles, I've always been pro market development, and kind of the only game in town that we've had for market development in soybeans in North Dakota is putting them on a unit train and sending them to Southeast Asia or China to get processed there. And from my standpoint, the more we can do here, the processing, more value added streams, there's just multiple layers of economic development that come along with a facility like the one that's proposed in Casselton.
It's important when you said value added. I mean, one struggle that North Dakota's had, I would argue, since statehood, is economic diversification. Our traditional industries in North Dakota, agriculture obviously being the chief one, and then energy in more recent decades, are wonderful. But they're commodity industries and production industries, and I think a lot of the problem is that makes us very susceptible to swings in the commodity markets. Diversification, which I would argue this is, where we're going to not just, we're going to create customers for our own products right here in our state and broaden our portfolio, I guess is one way to put it. That to me is of huge importance. Now, you've been in the legislature since 2021, so you've been through one session. By the way, what an interesting time to join elected office in politics. That would be the topic for a whole other podcast. But we, I think, anybody who lives in North Dakota knows this. Like, we need to do more things than just grow things. We need to do more things than just dig coal out of the ground. We need to also, process it and do a lot of other stuff too. But that's why this is projects like this, in my mind, are just so important.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and you hit on a key word there, diversification. Reminds me of my one legislative session so far, and one of the bills that I worked on, co-sponsored and worked really hard, and we were successful in doing, was setting up the Ag Diversification and Development Fund, House Bill 1475, which provides an opportunity for grants, loans, and interest rate buydowns for value-added types of projects. And in my time with the United Soybean Board, one of the focuses that we did, we shifted our strategic plan to talk about the components of the soybean, the meal, oil, and then our sustainability scores, because that's becoming more important to our end users. As a soybean checkoff, we're representing soybean producers and working towards benefiting them, trying to do what we can through funding projects and finding opportunities to enhance our value. So in the way I reconcile it, you talk about the ag and energy sectors, and they are commodity-based streams, and what a thing like a soybean crushing facility does is it doesn't decommoditize the soybeans, it recommoditizes them. So you start to focus on meal and oil and what properties you have coming out of that plant. North Dakota is really blessed in the makeup of their soybeans. We might have a little bit. We have a little bit of an issue with our protein levels, but that's made up by a higher percentage of a denser profile of essential amino acids, which are extremely key in livestock feeding operations, and makes North Dakota soybeans a real desirable product for the end user. And I really want to see livestock grow in this state, because that's extremely key when you look at the facility happening in Spiritwood, the possible one here in Casselton. Even you bring in the possible corn wet milling facility in Grand Forks, it provides more opportunities for North Dakotans to prosper from these investments.
One argument that I made about this is that we saw it not that long ago during the 2018 U.S. Senate race. Soybeans became a major issue in that campaign, and rightfully so, because we were in the midst of trade war, I think is the right word for it, with China, and local soybean producers kind of got caught up in this international war of words conflict, and a lot of the reason for that is how far flung, and I think between what happened in 2018 and around that time, as well as the pandemic, has shown us we maybe need to shorten some of these supply lines. And this, to me, this is how you do it, right? Is we build this stuff here in North Dakota.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It doesn't get any simpler than that. And as a producer coming through that time period when we did have those issues with China and not purchasing soybeans, it was really hard on soybean farmers because your basis increased dramatically. Because once again, there's only one game in town, and that's a shuttle loader facility. And unless you're doing the food grade market, and that's a great opportunity, but it doesn't always fit for every producer. Whereas an opportunity like a crush facility, that fits everybody.
I think anytime we can make our economy, whatever sector we're talking about, more flexible and give everybody from producers to consumers more choices, I think we all win. But let's talk about this facility specifically, because some people are saying it's too close to Casselton and it's going to have noise, smell. Address some of that. Address noise and smell specifically, because again, while any facility, I think, as a concept is a good idea, there are people who live there, and they shouldn't have to live next to a stinky plant that's lights are shining all the time. So address some of those, because that's some of the concerns coming from some people in Casselton. Speak to some of that for me.
Yeah, and I've been around a couple crush facilities. Had a chance to interact with quite a few crush facility managers and that. But the thing to me is every project's going to bring noise and probably some sort of odor, excuse me. But I'm not going to say there's no odor. I think it's negligible, and I think on the noise part of it, there's opportunities in plant designs and how you take and address and mitigate those issues. It really comes down to understanding the concerns of the community, because as you said before, it's valid questions that they have. And I don't want to take any of that away, but I think there are ways to mitigate the issues. You think about sound, and I know as a farmer in North Dakota, we've been taking out shelter belts, but a living barrier like a shelter belt could go a long ways in reducing the nominal noise that the facility would have. And maybe there's the way that the plant gets insulated. I know one of the larger noise drivers that contribute to I think it's been in the paper. They're talking 70 decibels, and there's ways to mitigate that with insulating around the fans, because it's basically exhaust fans that are doing are making most of the noise, and you can route where those go, the exhaust ports. It's not coming from the extraction part of it, or the roasting part of it. Probably the loudest portion of that, and I'm familiar with it because I run a seed conditioning facility, a mill, and that's probably going to be the largest portion or the loudest portion of that facility. And I think that, well, it's the loudest, it doesn't even contribute as much to the noise that's being talked about.
I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing is, we can build this sort of facility and address those issues, right? We can say, the light's an issue. Okay, let's find a solution for it. The noise is an issue. Well, there's things we can do. We can grow trees. We can, think about where we're locating things. It's not, instead of it saying no, it's saying, hey, let's work together to make this happen, which frankly, I think if you look at North Dakota's regulatory history, and I think this has its roots in our agrarian past, North Dakotans want to do things, right? We like using the land. We also like protecting the land, right? We want to make sure that the land is going to continue to produce generation after generation, but we also want to use it. And, I think that goes here too. Let's find a way to build this. Why does it have to be this? And this is one thing that, I've spoken to some of the opponents, and one thing they've told me is, why does it have to be here? Why does it have to be right there, so near Casselton? Why can't they pick a spot? North Dakota's got some wide open spaces. Why not pick another spot?
Well, I think, there's a number of factors that go into that. I'm sure a company like CGB did a national search. And really, you look at Cass County, North Dakota, they're the number one. They're number one for soybean plantings in the United States, the number one county. No crush facility there. So Casselton's unique in that it has the road infrastructure, the rail infrastructure, natural gas, and water. Those are natural gas, water, and land availability are the three key things when you build these facilities. And that's I'm sure that's what drove their site selection, along with the available supply of the raw product in the area. Because me being 60 miles away, it could draw some of my soybeans there. I know some of my local elevators will be hauling some soybeans that are produced in my area there if it happens.
What about the tax incentives question? And this probably, you're uniquely, not only are you a soybean producer, you're also a policymaker, who is involved in developing some of this policy sometimes. Tax incentives are always a tricky business. I think it's one of those funny things where when you like a project, the incentives are great, and when you don't like a project, they're the government picking winners and losers. So they kind of become this football sometimes. But that's one thing, and certainly that's what's up at the Cass County Commission, is they're talking about the incentives question, the tax incentives at this facility. So make that case. Why does a facility like this deserve the support of North Dakota's taxpayers?
Well, a project like this, I think, deserves the support just because, number one, it's going to bring more jobs into the community, direct jobs, good paying jobs. The utility companies will benefit. Local producers and producers are going to benefit, be impacted right away. And it actually will add, in my opinion, value streams, different ingredients that may spur development in other areas that North Dakota sorely needs. So, I think when you look at the tax incentive question, you got to create your sheet of pros and cons. And if I'm understanding it right, they're asking for a 15-year tax incentive. I know North Dakota statute allows 20 years. I think, by doing that, you will be benefiting the local school districts too, because we all know ag land isn't taxed at the same rate as commercial land. So there are benefits that jump out at me.
One thing that gets when these incentives go out sometimes, I think one thing that gets lost in the shuffle is we talk about the incentive given on the assumption that the project is going to be built, right? And what we're not looking at is what are the tax revenues being generated by that land as is, right? Because that's the status quo. That's what we're comparing it to. So it's not like if we don't build the facility, we're going to gain something we didn't have before, because what you had before is just what's there now. What you're saying is we're going to build this facility, and a lot of times what these incentives are is they're not going to pay a tax, or they're going to pay a reduced tax. And I guess I don't have the specifics, and maybe you could fill in that question mark. I don't have the specifics of what they're requesting in front of me. But a lot of times, it's basically it's some sort of a deferred tax or an exemption from tax, that's either in whole or in part of the facility once it's built. And if they don't build the facility, it wouldn't have generated any of that revenue anyway. So what are the taxpayers giving up? I guess is sometimes I think that's the question that gets missed.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact numbers either on what the pilot proposal is, but that you're exactly right. You can't, if you don't take into consideration what that revenue generation stream will be, even with the reduced rate. I know the Grand Forks corn wet milling facility, and I hate to keep bringing that up in a podcast about a soybean crushing facility, but I know when their pilot, it was a 90-10 reduction. So on 370 acres of ag land, in Grand Forks County, it's usually about $12 an acre in property tax. I'm not sure about Cass County, just ballparking about $4,500 for a 370 acre site for the wet milling facility. And I know that it's well over $900,000 in taxes that would be paid by the corn wet milling group into Grand Forks, and that's going to dramatically impact that community as far as schools, just city projects, and the like. So going back to the soybean facility, I'm not certain what the pilot program is, but I would guess it'd be something similar, because that's usually how those things work.
Right. And again, that's compare. I mean, it's they're going to build a facility, and obviously that's going to create various tax obligations. But if they don't build the facility, those obligations don't exist. So all you're really giving up is taxes that they would have paid had they not gotten the incentive. And I don't even know that that's really giving up anything. You're just not, at least for maybe an initial time period, you're just not gaining as much tax revenue as you would have without the incentive. But you're still gaining, and again, without specifics, I don't want to drill too deep on that. But I think that's something that gets lost in this debate a lot. Speaking again, just about, and I think some of this too is, and I don't want to use this term to be dismissive of what I think we both agreed were valid concerns about things like noise and smell and traffic. But there is sometimes a NIMBY, a not in my backyard attitude, where people want things. People say, we got to build more in the United States. We got to do more things in the United States. And I agree with that position. And again, I think that's the lesson of the pandemic in the last few years. We've got to shorten supply lines. We need to start doing more things in the United States of America again, including crushing our own soybeans. So, but the thing is, that's what this looks like. Like, if you want to crush more soybeans in the United States, then you got to build a crushing facility somewhere. And no matter where you put it, it's going to be in somebody's backyard. And that's, I think I always think of like that kind of that quip about how, we live, we out here in North Dakota, we live where the food gets made, right? So like, if you've been to a farm and you understand what it looks like to get food out of the ground, or to get, turn livestock into usable products, sometimes people don't find that to be a very appealing process, but, they think food just comes from the grocery store. Well, it doesn't. It comes from farms. Things have to be made. If we want to make things in America, then we have to build facilities. We have to build these sorts of projects in America. I think that's just, I think for a long time, we kind of were very satisfied to allow a lot of things that maybe weren't very pretty to look at sometimes, like, agricultural production, like manufacturing and some other things. We were happy to just let those things go to other places. And then they took the jobs and the prosperity that they created with them. We created really long supply lines, and now we're paying some of the prices for that. And today, to reverse that trend, to me, I mean, looking at it from kind of a 30,000 foot political or cultural view, this is the sort of thing we have to do. We have to build these sorts of facilities in the United States.
Yeah, and I would argue we need to build as many of them as we can in North Dakota, because we have the land, the space. We need more people. I mean, that's even though we're at a really nice population now, being in the legislature and going through redistricting, just remember when we did the special session, looking at the numbers and how redistricting played out. For the most part, those of us that serve in rural districts need to find a way to add more population. So look at areas. Sure, Casselton would be in District 22. Their population numbers are good because of the economic development that's going on in Fargo. Well, this is an opportunity for economic development for the rural areas of the state, and it's something that's critically needed. We talked about shortening supply lines. That's a must. And sustainability has been a buzzword, and the more we can we can do closer to the source of that commodity, the better off we are in those scores. I mean, I would rather ship a unit train of soybean meal has a whole heck of a lot more value than a unit train of whole soybeans. We've got, it's a great opportunity to bridge East and West again. I don't like to talk about East and West in the state, but it's a thing.
It's a reality.
It's a reality, and an unfortunate reality, because when I serve out there, even though I'm from the eastern part of the state, I'm concerned about my district, but I'm concerned about the state as a whole. So looking out at Marathon and being able to move soybean oil out there, because people in California have mandated the use of renewable diesel, that's just win-win-win for North Dakota.
Whatever we might think of their decision to do that, they've created a market, and there's no reason why North Dakota producers can't serve that market.
And really, just in the last handful of years, we were awash in soybean oil. We didn't know what we were going to do. The storage tanks were full, and now this, and that is a lot of what's driving this. But by leveraging the utilization of the oil there, and being able to piggyback onto it with the meal stream that usually is 70% of the value of the soybean, not the 20% that the meal, or 25% of the meal, oil would bring to the table. It's that inverse has shrunk quite a bit, and it's very exciting. I mean, it's something to be excited about, and it's something with North Dakota's lower protein oils. There's a benefit for it, and we have more oil in our soybeans, so we have more space for that. Now we are getting extraction facilities for that, so it's just an awesome opportunity for the community, the state, the region, and economic development isn't always pretty, and it doesn't always. It's not. I don't know. I heard somebody say economic development in North Dakota stinks, especially in the rural area, because you think about American crystal sugar, that smell isn't pleasant, but that's not the smell you're talking about here at Casselton. You're looking at being able to add value to North Dakota products and help the world go around.
Yeah. It's about creating, again, more markets for our stuff here. And again, regarding smell, regarding noise, regarding light, I think those are solvable problems through the process. But I think what's healthy for Americans, what's healthy for North Dakotans, is that we take a position that we want to build stuff. We want to build it here in the United States again. And the challenges for that, we're going to rise to those challenges and solve them. Jared, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the danger with, if this plant gets shut down, North Dakota, we want to be open for business. We used to have
billboards. Remember we were running billboards for a while? North Dakota open for business, right? We were poking some fun at our Minnesota neighbors, but.
Yeah, and look at the amazing opportunities that our Commerce Department has brought into the state. I mean, and this is one of them. I know they've worked on this, and the decision's going to be up to the Cass County Commission. That's how this works, but I think with engineering and just conversations, you've got to be able to have conversations with one another. When you're trying to pass a bill in the legislature, you don't talk to your seatmate and call it good. You've got to actively engage and be involved with the community, be involved with those that are going to be impacted, so you accurately understand what's going on the ground. And it's many hands make light work, and it's something that I think would benefit the community of Casselton tremendously. And they've got a nice little thing going on down there in Casselton. They've got a lot of value add down there. I utilize it in some other aspects, but really I couldn't be more excited about adding more production capacity for our soybean crop in North Dakota.
Agreed. Well, Jared, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And let's both hope for some warmer weather and a good growing season, too, for lots and lots of soybeans.
Right. Thanks, Rob.
Want more political news like this? Visit inforum.news/port to get 3 months of unlimited access to our news network for only 99 cents a month. Don't wait. Get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now.